Live.
Dr. Zeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. I'm Dr. Ben Reeves, an associate of the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, or NMI, working toward my Vitalist Fellow Track certification. The NMI envisions a world where enjoying optimal health care allows people to reach their highest potential for inspired creativity. It asserts that the highest ideal in healthcare must act in concert with the healing power of nature. And today we have NMI Fellow Dr. Jared Zeff joining us to chat a little bit about naturopathic medicine and the Naturopathic Medicine Institute. But before we get to our discussion, Dr. Zeff, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I wanna focus on the aspects of me relevant to our discussion. I'm a naturopathic physician. My license in Washington says drugless practitioner. That's what the old licenses said. I graduated from National College in 1979. As best we could determine at that time, there were approximately 200 practicing naturopaths in North America, about half of whom were recent graduates from NCNM. So I entered the profession at a time when it was considered dead by medical historians. A number of medical historians had written that naturopathic medicine was a dead branch on the tree of the healing arts, that it had flourished in the early 1900s and died out. Well, they were wrong. There was still a little living bud, and it started to grow. And part of my story is the story of that process. There were not many of us, and so a number of us, in one way or another, decided we didn't want the profession to die. And Jim Sensenig took a major role in reestablishing a national professional association, the AANP, which he was the first president of, then Kathy Rogers, then I think it was Tom Cruzel. And the profession began to redevelop infrastructure. We had no significant infrastructure. We had 6 states under licensure from a high point of, I think, 18. Now we're 21. So we've gone from 6 to 21, bypassing the high point of the original profession. We have, when I went to school, we had 1 school. Now we have 9. New one just opened on the East Coast. Another one's going to open on the East Coast. Another one's going to open in California. And Bastyr has bought an old school in Austin, Texas. And I think they will be opening that at some point. So we're right now we're at 9 schools. Pretty soon we're going to be 12. And the profession has regenerated. We have national standards, which we haven't had in a long time, 70 years. We have international recognition, international, like our relationship with docs in Canada, we're like brothers and sisters. But we have also professional colleagues in all over the world. We have the new International Naturopathic Congress, which is meeting in Europe every summer, I think. And it's growing. The profession is growing internationally. It's starting to be recognized increasingly by different governments. And the thing that was the dead branch on the healing arts isn't dead anymore. But we have a new problem. And the new problem is partly our success. That is to say, like I said initially, my initial license from the state of Washington says drugless practitioner. At that time, naturopaths in Washington could prescribe nothing that required a prescription.
Right.
Not even thyroid, not even hormones. Although in Oregon, I was dual licensed in Oregon. In Oregon, we could prescribe hormones and we could prescribe natural substances. But in Washington, we could not prescribe anything. But we had doctors like Otis Carroll, who was curing cancer with hydrotherapy, homeopathy, herbal medicine, his hands, electrotherapy or physiotherapy of various types, and his proteges, Dr. Dick, Dr. Scott, doing the same thing. And one of them, Dr. Harold Dick, was my mentor, and I studied with him because of a similar problem that we have today, and that is at school we learned a lot of stuff, and in those days more traditional naturopathy than we're learning now even. But when I graduated from school, I didn't have a really good understanding of how to make the medicine work. I felt like I had a big bag that I carried around, a metaphorical bag in which I had herbal medicine and acupuncture and homeopathy and botanical medicine, or manipulation and natural childbirth and vitamins and minerals and what we now call nutraceuticals and a few other things. And if somebody came to me who was ill, I would diagnose them in a conventional manner, more or less, and then take everything out of that bag that I thought might help and throw it at them, kind of like a shotgun. And what I found was that didn't work very well. Treating colds and flus was easy. They got better anyway, no matter what you did. Delivering babies, I did a residency in obstetrics, and I delivered babies, and I loved that, and that was part of my license. And well, that was interesting. But if somebody really sick came to me, somebody with crippling arthritis or somebody with an autoimmune disease, I'd throw all that stuff at them, and I didn't see much happen. And I became discouraged, and through a process, essentially a process, I mean, the short version is I wasn't sure what to do. I thought maybe I need to become a medical doctor so I could do IVs, which were illegal at the time, IV vitamins maybe.
Right.
But I prayed and fasted for a few days. I asked God to guide me, and a few days later, literally a few days later, within 2 weeks, I met this old doctor, Dr. Harold Dick. And I heard him speak at a little conference, and what he was saying was treating those cases was easy. And I thought, either this guy's full of hot air or he knows something. And so the next time I had one of those cases, I made an appointment for the person to see Dr. Dick, and I went with him, and I spent the day in his office, and I saw him. I interviewed a number of his patients who had things like crippling arthritis and incurable diseases, and they were getting better. And I thought, this is what I want. And right. I asked him if I could come back, and he said no. But I could come back one more time, he said. And I came back one more time, and I asked him again. He said, well, one more time. And I went back one more time for a number of years. I began to learn from him the things I really wanted to know, and that was, how do you heal people? How do you make the sick well? And I'd go to his clinic for 2 or 3 days a month. Then I'd come back to my clinic and try and apply what he taught me. What I know is medicine is learned by apprenticeship. Right. Medical school, if you graduate from MD school, our graduates generally know more than graduates from conventional medical schools. We've tested that out.
Right.
We can pass the tests better than they can in general. But they go on to a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 year apprenticeship called an internship and residency. We don't have that built into our system. We do 1,500 supervised clinical hours and put our doctors out into the world, and there are some residency opportunities. But
sure.
for at least the last 10 years, Jim Sensenig, myself, Tom Cruzel, Letitia Dick, a couple other people, when we'd see each other at conferences, we'd sit down and we'd complain about how come our doctors aren't learning what we know, how to heal people. How come they're coming out of school increasingly focused on pharmaceuticals? What's that got to do with naturopathic medicine? It's true that we can prescribe pharmaceuticals in a few jurisdictions, but certainly not the majority, and rarely in a new jurisdiction. And look at Connecticut, where Jim Sensenig practices. No prescribing of anything forever. They never had the right to prescribe anything, and yet Jim's there effectively treating very sick people and restoring them to health. So how do you do that? So we began worrying about, complaining about, trying to figure out how to get this information working in the schools.
Right.
Every one of us had been fired at least once from the school. We began roles in at least one school. We tried to influence the naturopathic education, and we found that it was a losing battle. Our schools are putting out not putting out people who understand the depth of ethic practice and its amazing capacity to restore the sick to health.
Right.
So we began asking ourselves, how can we do this? What can we do? And so I remember sitting down with, it was about 10 years ago, and we drew up a curriculum. This is what we think people should know.
Right.
To be able to practice effectively and do the kinds of things that excite us. I mean, I've been in practice 38 years. I love what I do. I love coming to work every day, and I love seeing people heal from impossible problems, so to speak. Dr. Dick told me there are no incurable diseases. There are some incurable patients, however. That's another story. Anyway, we drew up this curriculum and we tried to figure out a way to make it happen. We met with videographers. We met with other people to try and put something together, and nothing happened until Eli Camp came along, and basically a year ago, the Vital Conversation had 20 people on it when we started it. Right. Now there's over 700. In fact, the last time I talked to her was 700. I wouldn't be surprised it was 800 now.
Wow.
Those people, mid-year, about 6 or 8 months ago, went to Eli and said, we want more. He found this old curriculum and gave it to them, and then they began to demand that we teach it. And so there was this kind of upwelling or rising up from the people we truly wanted to have this information, starting to demand it. And that birthed the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, which had been a dormant shell that Jim had created a number of years ago. And now we had something to fill it with. And so we have a vehicle now to create postdoctoral education in the traditional vitalistic naturopathic medicine that heals people. It's extremely exciting to me. It's very fulfilling. I am so happy that there's an interest in this and that we can pass on this information, because what our profession is, half of it's fading away, fading into conventional medicine. They want to prescribe drugs. They want to do IV. I mean, IVs are fine, but they're high, they're invasive. In the past few years, at least 3 people have been killed by naturopaths doing IVs. Now, it's not necessarily the fault of the naturopath, but the problem is when you start operating, when you bypass the vital force, the wisdom of the body that tries to determine what, when you say, I know what needs to go in the blood, right, and you need more of this than your body would normally do, well, 3 people have died.
Right.
You don't that to heal people. I'm glad there's IVs. They're useful treatments, but I don't do them. I haven't found that I need to do them. And in the circumstance, one, I 2 doors down from me who does them. I send them over to him. And that maybe 2 or 3 people a year, not many. Sure. But I mean, I understand why people want to do them. On the other hand, what excites me is watching people heal things that have no potential for harm. Homeopathy, hydrotherapy, herbal medicine, dietary medicine, using my hand to make a fundamental improvement in people rapidly, in the depth of their being, turn the sick into healthy, is the science of naturopathic medicine and the art of naturopathic medicine. Deeply satisfying. And well, so I don't want to quit. I'm 70 years old. I'm in practice 38 years, and I don't want to stop. I mean, not till I have to, and hopefully my plan is to die at my desk in about 30 years or something like that.
Wow, well, thanks for that, Dr. Zeff. Is there anything else you want to say about the NMI?
Well, the NMI is a vehicle now for conveying this in. It has a multi-level option. www.naturopathic-medicine-institute.org and read all about it. You can start listening to the Vital Conversation on Wednesdays, or it's recorded, so you can listen anytime by essentially by a podcast. There are webinars. I've done several. I am doing a series called Practical Medicine. I did prescribing of homeopathic medicines. Tom Puzel has done them. Jim's done some. Letitia's done some. Other people have done some. There's going to be more and more and more of these, which then plug into group meetings where we do some didactic and hands-on training, and then that's ultimately going to develop into some kind of a, I don't want to call it residence, apprenticeship options for learn what we have to teach. So it's become the vehicle that satisfies this problem that we've seen, the slipping away of our profession, the greening, the allopathic greening of the profession,
right?
So to speak. Which, I mean, that's nice. I'm glad people want to do that, except you can do better, I think. And that's what excites me. When somebody comes into my office in tears, can't hardly function, and within a short period of time, they're thanking me for giving them back their life. And what did I do? I gave them a little homeopathic medicine or two, or I gave them some herbal differently. I did a little hydrotherapy. I maybe worked on them with my hands, and I love it. I just love seeing people heal.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Zeff, for taking the time today. I want to respect you've got a busy day going. I think it's a good time to wrap up our interview. Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about how to become an associate of the Institute, go on over to naturopathic-medicine-institute.org. Watch for our upcoming conferences and events. We've got the Vital Gathering coming here October 13th, 14th, and 15th. At the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, the laws of cure are seen to be immutable, and the healing power of nature is acknowledged, discussed, unpacked, and celebrated. Thank you so much, Dr. Zeff.
My pleasure.